Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. As China asserts its claims in the South China Sea, sparking territorial disputes, Malaysia, situated in a key maritime corridor of the South China Sea and a strategic nation in Southeast Asia, celebrates the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations with China this year. In late September, Malaysian head of state Sultan Ibrahim Iskandar visited China. What impact will the deepening Malaysia-China cooperation have? Next year, Malaysia will assume the chairmanship of ASEAN. In the context of U.S. China relations, how will Malaysia play a diplomatic role? As Vietnam, Brunei, and Taiwan challenge China's maritime claims, how should Malaysia position itself? And how can Malaysia seek a balance between the U.S. and China? Joining us today are Lai I-chung, Prospect Foundation President, and Chen Ming-chi, National Tsing-Hua University Institute of Sociology Associate Professor. A warm welcome to both of you on a show.
Thank you for having me.
So in the Malaysia and China meeting, Malaysian head of state Sultan Ibrahim opened the meeting with a phrase, "to enjoy blessings and endure misfortune together," which has been interpreted as an expression of the strong and enduring relationship between the two countries. So overall, how do we view the relationship between Malaysia and China, President Lai?
I think right now the Malaysia and China relation among the Southeast Asian nation probably is one of the warmer one in comparison, especially with the country like Philippines. And I think that has something to do with Malaysia, first of all, its own positions regarding the U.S. China competitions, but also about Malaysia's internal politics. That is, the Malaysia's current premier, Ibrahim Anwar, he sits on a very fragile coalition of powers. That means that the Anwar is in need of the economic performances to bring the stability for his governance. And then he considered China to be the opportunity for Malaysia's economic performance to be able to thrive. And so that he really tried hard to cultivate the Malaysia-China relation. Of course, next year is Malaysia will assume the ASEAN chair, and China will take that as a very, very important opportunity to engage with Malaysia in order to engage in ASEAN. So that both sides, they have the will and also the need for the warmer relationship. So that's how we are looking at this development right now.
So you talk about not just the external environment, but also due to the domestic politics of the situation in Malaysia. So we understand that Malaysia is actually one of the largest beneficiaries of China's Belt and Road Initiative, BNI, for 14 consecutive years. When it comes to the relationship between China and Malaysia, compared to China's relationship with other ASEAN countries, how is that different, Professor Chen?
As the President Lai mentioned that, I think the China and ASEAN countries, they are not the same. Some countries getting closer, and like Malaysia during the MOR, and I think the Philippines have a sort of a drift away, and the Vietnam has some territorial dispute with China. Basically, ASEAN countries in general maintain a sort of a balanced position between China and the U.S. They all understand their security rely very much upon the China's protection, while their economic opportunity lay with China. So they have been trying to maintain the balance. It's very difficult, a delicate balance to maintain. But now China's economy is now slowing down very fast. I wonder how much that kind of a warm relationship can continue. After all, they are all have their own national interest to care about. So every country, especially the country around the South China Sea, they all have a territorial dispute given the China's very aggressive behavior in the South China Sea there. So, for example, in Malaysia, even the current government, MOR's government, will continue the three-prong policy from his predecessor. That means they will be very assertive in terms of sovereignty, but they try very much to decouple the sovereignty issue and territorial dispute from the economic affairs. And third is that they will follow the ASEAN's rule to settle the conflict. So I think this also the continuation of Anwar's policy.
So Professor Chen talked about the delicate balance for these ASEAN countries to maintain when it comes to maintaining their own, say, sovereignty, but also maintaining good relations with China. So moving on, President Lai, you just talked about that Malaysia will assume the chairmanship of ASEAN next year. So next year, what kind of important diplomatic role will Malaysia play, in your opinion?
I think we have to look at Malaysia's probable diplomatic role next year in two ways. The first one is that how Malaysia will position the ASEAN itself. But the second one, that is also equally important, is about Malaysia's view about its position within Muslim world, because Malaysia is a Muslim country. And that character also dictates a lot of Malaysia's own decision, especially in terms of the Malaysia position vis-a-vis U.S. China competitions. That is precisely due to its objections to a large extent about the U.S. policy toward Middle East. So I think those two factors will play a very important role in shaping Malaysia, its possible behavior next year when assume the ASEAN chairs. So go back to the earlier one, that is about Malaysia's role in the ASEAN chairs. In addition to the maintaining and intensively engaging with China, and also ASEAN's position, not just about China, but also with other countries. Malaysia also faced the issue about the internal problem in the Myanmar, especially about the internal civil war within Myanmar, and also Malaysia cares about very much is Rohingya issues. That Malaysia believed that it should champion about the Muslims being prosecuted by the Myanmar government. That issues need to be brought up. So I believe that under the Malaysia's leadership in the ASEANs, in addition to the external relationship about how the ASEAN engage with China, U.S., Japan, Korea, for example, but within the ASEAN itself, how Malaysia will bring about the Myanmar issues. The two prongs of Myanmar issue, one of them is a civil war, but another one is about the Rohingyas, the Muslim population being prosecuted. And I think both of them could very much surface to the waters.
Mm-hmm. This is a very interesting observation. You're saying that because Malaysia is also a Muslim country, so you talk about a civil war and also the situation in the Muslim world. Professor Chen, what's your take on this? How should Malaysia position itself when addressing these complicated issues?
I agree, but I want to add one point that I think within the ASEAN countries, there are difference of attitude to China. I think currently, at least the Philippines have a very serious territorial dispute with China. So how can he take up a leadership and take care of the other members? That is quite challenging for them. ASEAN is a very loosely organized organization after all. Whether they can sort of exert a lot of influence on other countries' policy, and China, how much China can play a role through the chairmanship of the ASEAN. That is something remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. So talking about the dynamics in the region, whether it's competition or cooperation, now we see that China's economy is not doing so well. So a lot of foreign investment are actually flowing out to these ASEAN countries. How will that affect the relationship between these ASEAN countries and China? Because China used to be the biggest investment destination, but now money are flowing to other countries. How to strike a balance?
I think China now is still #1 trading partner of Malaysia. As long as that remains the way, Malaysia will try to separate its security issue with the trade issue. They will try to maintain, or even though many companies have moved away from China and begin to invest in Malaysia, let's not forget that many of them are from China. Mm-hmm. Many of them are Chinese companies. So they try to sort of keep a rather smooth relationship with China so as not to get in the way of the trade. especially when the trade bring up a lot of potential, economic growth potential in Malaysia. I think the momentum is very important to the current MR administration.
Thank you, Professor Chen. And going back to what President Lai, you talk about the human rights and also the situation between Malaysia and China. So how do you see the possible, say, different, you can say, clashes of values, for example, when it comes to human rights, and also you can see that in China, they're trying to get the better advantage in this area. How do you see Malaysia should position itself in terms of the territorial claims in South China Sea? There seems to be some conflicts, right?
I do not think that Malaysia will place a value front and center in this relationship with China, especially when it represents ASEAN. And I also believe that Malaysia tended to downplay the territorial disputes about the ASEAN with China, specifically because Malaysia itself, although also has some dispute with China in terms of South China Sea issues. But Malaysia tended to downplay on all those development in order to stabilize a relation with China for a better economic gain it perceived that it could get from China. And that is the reason why that I foresee under Malaysia leadership in ASEAN, the South China Sea issue probably will be buried a little bit further. And that could become the one center of the attention within the ASEAN, specifically among some of the South China Sea claimant states like Philippines, Vietnam to a certain extent, vis-a-vis the leadership of the ASEAN like Malaysia. And even probably that will also bring about the difference between Malaysia and Indonesia. So I think that the South China Sea issues under the Malaysia's leadership next year will not be the issue between ASEAN and China, but could be the issue within the ASEAN itself, especially among those claimant states. And I also say that just a supplement to what the Professor Chen said regarding ASEAN-China economic relationship. I think the Chinese, the declining economy or the weakened market definitely take away the ASEAN's possible export destination toward China. That volume definitely will be taken out. And actually, it also will give the Chinese that when China try to export their problem out of the economic depressions, so that the export to Malaysia probably will start to become more and more. But at the same time, the Chinese companies will also bring a lot of foreign direct investment into Malaysia in order to avoid the tension between U.S. and China in the trade war. So that the Malaysia will receive, first of all, the dumping from Chinese products into the Malaysia domestic market, and which they will very much concerned about. But at the same time, they will also receive a lot of the foreign direct investment coming from China, in which probably to Malaysia, they believe that they could bring the economic prosperity among the peoples. So what Malaysia will see China economically will be more in the mixed pictures. So that really depends on which factor wins out to determine on how Malaysia look at China economically.
If we zoom out a bit and look at the global situation, now the tensions between the U.S. and China are still rising. What kind of role should Malaysia play and how should they position itself? Because the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar also believes that ASEAN can play a central role in curbing such kind of tension. So what's your take on this, Professor Chen?
I don't see that is much role that ASEAN country can play in the U.S.-China competition, to say or sometimes we call it a rivalry. It's about the clash of two empires. They all have aspiration to become the global hegemon. So we don't see that. It's quite pre-assuming that the ASEAN country want to say they can be the middle road. I think they are more like a dependent, and that they can sort of leverage the division between these two superpower and try to benefit from it. And I see less chance they will become a very active and constructive part of this clash of empires.
So following the same line, Malaysia, they claim that they should be, ASEAN as a whole should be the cohesive force rather than being drawn into the big power competition. But we do see some ASEAN countries taking side, like what you said, Philippines are sided with the U.S. and some countries have different approaches. Do you think that Malaysia can continue to maintain its position despite the competition between the U.S. and China? President Lai.
I think the ASEAN itself right now face the problem about internally there's no cohesion among themselves. Different countries have a different interests and they move in different directions. And there's also the Myanmar civil war issues. That is a test about the ASEAN, whether that can really solve the issue within its own member states about the problems. And I also believe that under the Malaysia, the South China Sea would not be the issue. You try to bury and take away from the radar screens. And that will also bring to I'm not going to say confrontation, but probably the tension and differences among the claimant states of the South China Sea within the ASEAN country and vis-a-vis Malaysia. And another thing about it is that Malaysia also needs to be aware about the Chinese presence in the lower Mekong area. And that is about the Thailand, about the Cambodia and Laos, as well as Vietnam, because the Chinese presence in the continental Southeast Asia is very strong. And it raised already a very good concern, especially among Thailand, when China started dumping all the electric vehicle into Thailand and basically kills many of the foreign direct investment in Thailand about the motor industries. But finally, I'll say that Malaysia's position toward the U.S. China competition and how Malaysia will drive the ASEAN in navigating about these competitions. I will say that this development will be colored by Malaysia, its own Muslim identities in the issue about the U.S.-China relationship. Specifically, how Malaysia look at the currently immediate conflicts among the Israel and the Hamas and Israel and the Iran or the Hezbollahs. That Malaysia tended to believe that the United States is doing all the wrong things by supporting Israel. And the Muslim population has been unfairly dehumanized, that the U.S. need to be responsible and rein Israel in order to bring the peace. In Malaysia, so that angle basically will navigate the Malaysia's view regarding U.S.-China competitions. So how the China is looking at or play its role in the Hamas and also the Palestinian issues, and how the U.S. is doing in terms of how Malaysia look at it as very negative factors. I think the Malaysia basically will navigate toward China rather than maintain a very good equal distance between U.S. and China. So I would say that next year, the whole ASEAN approach under Malaysia, probably we're going to see more of a pro-China color rather than a equal distance, like Malaysia always wanted to claim that it is neutral between the U.S.-China competition, because I would say that the Muslim identity itself will be a very important factor in shaping its own decisions.
So talking about the Muslim identity, and Malaysia is not the only Muslim country in ASEAN. So Professor Chen, do you agree with what President Lai said? Yes. Due to this Muslim nature, do you think that the situation in the Middle East will kind of like push ASEAN away from the U.S.?
There's a ripple effect from the Middle East situation for the other Muslim countries around the world in the ASEAN. Within the ASEAN, I think at least two, Malaysia is probably not as Muslim country as the Indonesia. So Indonesia will be another issue. They sort of have a, they sympathize with these Muslim brothers in the Middle East and get angry, especially I think from the civil society. They might get angry with how U.S. handle the whole situation. So yes, I believe that could be a big role, especially Indonesia and Malaysia. They are facing election, so they have to consolidate their support domestically.
Indeed. So continuing our coverage, we're closely following the 75th anniversary of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference held in September. At the conference, Xi Jinping addressed cross-strait relations and the Taiwan issue, in addition to the missile test launch at the end of September. But how should we interpret the underlying significance? So we know that on September 25th, the Chinese Communist Party conducted a test launch of the intercontinental ballistic missiles in the direction towards the Pacific Ocean. So according to the U.S. Security Advisor Sullivan, he expressed that President Biden actually would like to reopen a dialogue with Xi Jinping. So what kind of specific purpose is there? Like, what's the underlying message for this test launch?
I think the test launch itself, probably the audience, there are several folds. The first one is that China wants to demonstrate to the United States that among all the alliances or the lattice for system you create surrounding China, that I'm still able to hit you. And not just about you, but also your other friends could also be my target. I think that's the first message by this test launch. But second one is more about domestic. That is, we do know that the Chinese rocket force leadership in last year all the way to this year, there's a very widespread the leadership cleanup within the Chinese systems. And associated with that, for outside study to have the impression that the rocket forces probably will not be as very capable fighting forces in prosecuting the Xi Jinping's orders. And so that by this test launch, to a certain extent, is to show to the Xi Jinping and also to show to the outside that the rocket force is still a very capable force. It matters very much, and it is a very elite and be able to conduct a very precise operations under the current leadership. And also that is the way for the Xi Jinping to know that, look, the new leadership come in, the rocket forces itself is intact, and also its eliteness is there. So that is the kind of the message I believe that this test launch would like to bring.
Definitely, China would like to flex its muscle, showing to the world how powerful it is. But going back to the consultative conference held by China, usually they would mention Taiwan or cross-strait on multiple occasions and stating it multiple times. So this time, they only mentioned Taiwan twice and like Taiwan independence just once. Do you think that, some people say that this is kind of a way of de-emphasizing military reunification in the Taiwan policy? Do you agree with this kind of statement, or you have different opinions, Professor?
Oh, well, sometimes people overread into their script. I mean, yes, they do carefully choose every word what they want to send to the world. But I think CPPCC has always been sort of soft hand toward Taiwan. It's about the united front work. So I think this time, with the military testing the ICBM, and the CPPCC sort of sent a very ambiguous signal to Taiwan. It's again falling to the all behavior pattern of the Chinese communist leadership. That is to use both hands to handle external condition, external situation. So. It's not a big surprise to any keen observer of the cross-strait affairs that they will say that. I think it continues the tone. But we cannot forget that after our inaugural speech by President Lai I-chung, they conduct the joint exercise. There's not particularly a friendly gesture toward Taiwan. So I think it's keep on sending the mixed signal to the world and to Taiwan, and they want to have the freedom of actions.
So going back to our topic today, Malaysia, in terms of the regional situation, do you think that Taiwan will have a chance to substantively improve our relations with Malaysia? President Lai.
Right now, I'm very cautious about those. And although we do have substantial success in the New Southbound policy, and also score some good points in Malaysia, but I would say that the current Malaysia leadership especially the Prime Minister Anwar. He very much placed the China at the front and center for his foreign policy, as well as the Malaysia economic development. The way that he went to China and the way he expressed about Taiwan in order to accord the Chinese support, that also basically brings about that the Malaysia probably would like to place Taiwan in the back burner, and that Taiwan does not matter that much in Malaysia leadership's thinkings. And so I think that the future does not look to be particularly bright. We just have to be very cautious about the development. Although on the people-to-people, as well as the commercial and economic relationship, Taiwan and Malaysia continue to enjoy very strong engagement between each other. But when we talk about the strategic economic and activities, that is something that probably will need more careful deliberations.
So one quick final question. How should Taiwan improve our relationship with the ASEAN countries overall?
First off, more understanding. I think that is happening now. Second is that when our companies begin to diversifying away from China, we have seen more opportunity in the Southeast Asian country. By investing, we are improving the economic situation. I think gradually they could earn the hearts and minds of the ASEAN countries' people.
Thank you so much for your insights. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.